Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to we'll go today instead of tonight's podcast, the episode of the Small Ball Podcast, brought to you by the First Bank, as we are every week. Go see the good folks over at the First for any financial needs that you may have. Our buddy Sirio up there in Starkville is kind of the one that kicked it off, and we found out we've got all kinds of connections there to the First. So if they'll hold your money, they'll give you money. I don't think they'll take your money. So go check them out. They'll help you out any way that they can. I'm Charlie Rogers. I'm here with Chancy Rogers, owner-operator Bull Baseball. Chancy's connection is a little iffy today, but we're going to try to work through it and push through it. And this is going to be an episode of Rogers. You're going to be tired of the name Rogers when you're done today, because it's going to be me and Chancy and Dr. Allison Rogers. We're going to talk about how to overcome failure in a game of failure. And that's exactly what it is. But let's start off. Chancy, how's it going today, man?
Man, go good, Charlie. I got vaccinated professionals all night.
Like we said, Chancy's internet connection is not great. He'll be probably in and out some. Can you hear me now, Chancy? So I know Allison's connection is a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'll just go ahead and bring Allison in, and then Chancy dropped off. And so I'll bring Allison in and we'll talk. And then when Chancy gets back, he can jump in as well. Well, let's see. I want to welcome Allison Rogers, Dr. Allison Rogers. I knew you before you were Dr. Allison Rogers. But Allison, we just talked about it before we came on air. Tell me what your exact title is so I don't mess it up.
Yeah, I am the Assistant Director of Counseling and Sports Psych in the Athletic Department at Mississippi State.
Mississippi State University.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chancy's back with us too now. So, Chancy, can you with us now? Can you tell us how your day's going?
I'm with you. I was trying to talk to our internet, but everything's out. So it's a little iffy, and it's got a bad storm. So I don't know what to do.
Yeah, we do have some storms going to come through tonight as well. I guess Chancy and Allison didn't y'all not pay the internet bill, or y'all just make somebody mad?
That was the first thing I said. But, she said she paid it.
Okay. Okay, I believe you.
That's not my duties.
So Allison and I have a connection kind of going way back. Allison used to work with me at the Baptist Children's Village, and I like to think that I catapulted her into into bigger and better things. But man, we've known each other for a while, and Allison's super smart and intelligent and very dedicated to what she does. And so I really do appreciate you coming on today and talking with us.
Absolutely. I enjoy my time at the Village with you. And you joke about that, but there was a lot of learning experiences that help me now doing what I do, working in a capacity at the Village. So yeah, I mean, you can take credit for it. That makes you feel better.
Any little win is good for me. I'll take whatever I can get. So let's jump right in. I liked Chancy's title for this episode was baseball is a game of failure. And Chancy, say it how you said it.
Yeah. So I said we're our sport is a failure sport, but I have fear of failure. And, I was speaking it in a player's, perspective, a kid's perspective, kind of like you're scared of the dark. There's a lot of kids that have that fear of failure, but we keep talking about they're playing the failure sport. So, I just wanted to I thought that was kind of a clever way and a way that we can look at it as parents, coaches, and instructors and like to try to help these kids. And when I say kids, I mean, of course, rolling all the way into the college and professional, ranks, and they have to do it every day. And when you get up there, it's their job. But a lot of times we this is also your kid's job at the time. They go to school and their job is to play a sport in a sense. They have to work at it and earn things. And so, a lot of that all piles up to that, like, hey, I don't want to screw up. I don't want to strike out. I don't want to get out. I don't want to walk a person, whatever it may be. And so I just kind of want to put it out there and let people think about that for a minute,
Yeah, definitely. Allison, I kind of want to work backwards on this because Chancey just mentioned it. You're working with college athletes and it is kind of their job, but talk about the effects of failure on, we think about it just as kids, but really college athletes are still just kids. So talk about a little bit about the effects of failure on some of the folks that you see, at your age, not specifically, but kids the age that you're working with day to day.
So I think it's really like a universal thing, right? You're going to see fear of failure at every level, regardless of sport, and regardless of whether or not you're an athlete. I think the three of us can say we're fearful of failing at something. So it's very prominent across all environments. I think the key is, and I start this conversation every time, why are they failing? And understanding like the why and the foundation of that fear is really the key. And a lot of times it has to do with the failure is responded to, if that makes sense. So like as a parent, if your kid makes a C on an exam and they studied, they gave it their best effort, but you still were very angry with them for making a C on the exam. Well, that's going to create pressure in a sense, and then a fear of failure. So when you think of it in that context, think of it the same way on a baseball field, right? If a kid misses a routine ground ball and the coach goes berserk, how do you think that kid's going to fail when how do you think that kid's going to feel when that next ground ball is hit to them? They're terrified because they know if they fail again, then there's a negative response, and that negativity is associated with the mistake. So I say all that to say, it happens across at all ages, even my minor league guys that I've worked with. You see it there. And so there's really not a pinpointed that's why they feel that way. It's different for every individual, and it's going to be based off whatever experience that individual has had when it comes to, failing or making a mistake.
So different elements to it as far as, not wanting to disappoint yourself, obviously, not wanting, if say it may embarrass you, it may, you may feel like, hey, if I mess up, I'm going to lose my spot or whatever. But there's also the element of not wanting to let down somebody else, right? So there's your coaches, your parents, your mentors, whoever. So there are different elements to it is what you're saying.
Yeah, but even dive into that expectation piece for an individual. Like we say they're going to disappoint themselves, right? They feel like they've embarrassed themselves or disappointed themselves. But why do they feel that way? Who created the expectation that they should be perfect and never fail? So we have to reflect on that as coaches and parents too, that we make sure our setting, realistic goals for themselves. Like you can't have a hitter go out and expect, like a hitter can't go out and expect, or shouldn't go out and expect to hit, 4 for 4 that day. So what are we teaching as coaches and parents? What are we teaching athletes? What expectation are we teaching them? And like digging into the, if they do fail, why are they disappointed in themselves? Where did that expectation for themselves come from?
So setting realistic goals. So how do we do that? I mean, what do we say? What do we say to kids as a parent or as a coach to try to combat that? we're in a winning society, right? Everybody wants to win. And Chance and I talk about that every week about, hey, do we put too much emphasis on winning? How should we approach a kid to try to combat some of that pressure or fear of failure?
It's really hard at a youth age. I will say that, because I think for individuals, it boils down to like how you define success. Like, is success for you winning a ball game, or is success for you honing your craft so that you're better than you were yesterday? And so when I work with athletes, that is what we focus on. That is winning. If we are better than what we were yesterday, right? So when I was in private practice in Hattiesburg, had a soccer player that I was working with off the coast, right? And so he was very adamant that he needed to not make any errors in passing so he could up his assist numbers. Okay. So instead of focusing on not making any errors, we focused on, okay, how many assists did you have the previous game? Okay. I had 8. All right. Well, let's go for 9 this game. And so if you set a goal like that, then they feel productive, successful, regardless of the outcome. Because as we all know, it's a team sport, right? You can't create goals and expectations for an individual that's based on the performance of others. So in order to
go ahead.
So if you can add in on there, just as a coach and instructor, and as a dad too, these kids, and they have to, for them to catch the ball, someone like to play catch with that, they have to want to catch that ball more than anything else. Am I froze? Fine.
Yeah.
No.
You're not frozen. It's just choppy. Well, he's going. I think he was wanting to say, going back to like throwing the ball with your parents. I think what I was. Okay.
I think I understand the question.
Chance,
like,
can you say that again?
Yeah. So, as a dad, instructor, and coach, training these kids, we uber focused to want to do, whatever task it is, hitting, catching, but catching in particular, they have to want to catch that ball more than anything else. They have to want to catch that ball more than they're worried about missing it or hitting them in the face. Right? That's how I kind of help coach them up. It's hard to do that without kind of what you was talking about earlier, like how much expectation I expect them to get. I want them to catch the ball. That's the only way they're going to do it. So I know it's hard for dads and coaches to kind of break that line in a sense. If you had to deal with that or seen that, it's like, yeah, they've got to want to do whatever it is, but it's okay if you miss it, right? It's okay, buddy, but you got to want to catch it more than you did the last time, right? Am I on track there? You get any of that? Maybe not. No. Oh.
Who wants to catch the ball? Is it the kid or is it the dad? Is it the kid or is it the coach? So one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a mentor was, I cannot work harder than my clients. So as a parent, I can't want that more than my child. As a coach, I want that more than my athlete. And it's very hard for parents, especially those of us who are in love with sports, right? We want our kids to thrive. We want our kids to do this. It's very hard as a parent to step back and say, but does my kid really want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
And is that the reason they don't want to catch the ball, right? So if they say they do want to catch the ball, get start why I'm catching the ball. Does that kind of answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, but to get them to catch the ball, I mean, obviously, they've got to want to, and the parent can't just want them to do it for, they can't want it for them. It's not going to work. But, we're talking about, that was the lowest of task, goes into like hitting a curveball or catching a hard fly ball, anything. Their want to has to oversee the fear of failure, and then, but we have to be okay. We have to be okay. They have to be okay with not catching it. So I'm saying it's a fine line, just like our son. He's very competitive. He wants to make every basketball shot that he makes. He wants to hit every single time. He struck out yesterday with me throwing. He was not happy. He was confused. In fact, like, what? I said, no, strike three. You're done. See ya. I kind of wanted him to, so that he'd be ticked off for the next time, and he hit it good, But I think that's a battle that coaches have to deal with, and parents too.
Well, and I think we have to, with letting athletes feel the emotion, right? A lot of times we're like, don't show emotion. They don't need to see you. You can't react. So I think we have to get to a place where we let our athletes feel that emotion, but we also teach them how to use that emotion. Because especially in male athletes, or males in general, they're so drilled never to show emotion, right? But emotion's a good thing as long as you can use it in the right way. So like with our 5-year-old that he's talking about striking out, like I want you to have that passion and that drive to want to hit every time, right? I want you to feel that, and I'm going to let you experience it. But then we're going to have a conversation after the fact about, you're not going to hit it every time, and that's okay. Mom's not mad, dad's not mad, coach is not mad. So I think we have to live in that space where we allow them to experience that emotion, and then we also have to watch how we as parents and coaches react to that emotion, right?
I think that's a big part of what you're saying right now. And this is what Chancy and I were talking about last week whenever you commented on Instagram about what we were saying. But the big part of this is putting kids in a situation to experience failure so that they know how to respond. One, that so that they know how they respond to it, but then so that we can teach them how they should respond or how they can use it in a positive way. We were talking about the team last week that's a AAA team that bumped down to AA, and we're bragging because they only gave up one run on the whole weekend. Well, those kids, if they continue to do that, I don't know if they'll do it every weekend, but if they continue to do that, those kids won't experience failure. And so when they do get to a level where they can't avoid failure, they don't know how they're going to respond to it. And also, no one has ever taught them how to properly respond to it or harness it and use it.
You're absolutely right. But on the flip side of that, I want to think about this piece too, and this may throw a kink in everything. Kids also have to be put in positions to succeed as well. They can't continually be where they feel defeated. So there's a healthy balance to experiencing failure as well as putting them in positions to be successful. Because
Absolutely.
if I 1,722 times, like playing goofy golf, and I can never win at it, I don't play goofy golf anymore. Because I don't want to experience that, and I never can succeed. So I think there's a healthy balance in making sure our kids are experiencing failure, but also experiencing success, because they need to feel those two emotions.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I talked to Jackson last week about, the reason we do 5 and Live. That's that reason. I want them to, I'm throwing my good little BP fastball, and they're able to, we get barrels and hit some doubles and, that kind of thing. And that's what I want. I think it does help them, no doubt. And, that rolls all the way into, last week we had a first rec ball practice, and I was talking about Nolan, hitting the ball hard. It was a line drive, but it went all the way to the fence. So he got him a home run. he got the home plate and he was so fired up. You can't tell me he wasn't ready to hit again. You know, he was ready to hit again. And so I think that happens a lot, you know, and sometimes don't happen. And then that's where you find them kids that get lost in the shuffle. And sometimes
Definitely.
it ain't it's not their sport now, you know. Sometimes it ain't in the books for them, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's what Allison was talking about. Does the kid determining whether the kid wants to play or not? Does the kid want to do it because dad wants them to do it and they don't want to let them down, or they want to do it because they want to do it? And I think that, like you just said, if you do set a kid up to fail constantly, which I think some coaches do, I think some parents do, but if you do set a kid up to fail constantly, whether they wanted to play baseball or football or basketball or any sport, whether they wanted to initially or not, they're not going to want to, because it's nothing but disappointment for them. So that's why you do have to, we talk about putting kids in positions, you know, that are tough, putting them in tough positions, putting them in positions to fail so they get better, because that's the only way you get better. But I do think that sometimes we forget that we need, and I do it too, but I do think sometimes we forget that we need to give them some situations where they can't lose, where they have to win, you know, where they, you know, whether it's in practice. I mean, you don't have to go to a tournament and blow out a bunch of teams that are worse than you, but whether it's in practice or whether it's in a scrimmage or whatever, put them in a position where they're going to win or be successful, just because you can't constantly beat them down.
Yeah, and I want to add this to it. Go ahead, Allie, and then I'm gonna add something to it.
No, I was just gonna remind that there, you know, I can get on my soapbox about this kind of stuff. Like, there's a difference between winning and being successful. So putting them in positions to be successful, putting them in positions to win are two different things, in my opinion. Because I don't define.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Success and winning aren't parallel in my book.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, like I don't expect to win at everything. I expect to be better than I was yesterday, right? I just, that's what I like, my core beliefs in regards to success. I don't think success is defined by money. I don't think it's defined by winning. I think it's defined in for me. I'm not an athlete anymore, but for me now is, am I pouring into people? Am I helping people navigate challenges? Like, am I fulfilling what I believe is my purpose? And so when you talk about that with athletes, like, well, what is your purpose for playing? Why do you play? You would be surprised at how many kids or athletes in general can't answer that question. Because my dad wants to, because I like to hang out with my friends.
Because I always have.
Because I always have, right. But they have to be able to feel some sense of purpose by playing. And that, to me, having purpose is success.
Yeah, and
what eventually? Go ahead, Chance.
I think some kids enjoy those moments. You know, if you ask me, you know, why I coach or why I play, I enjoy moments. I enjoy those times, and this is kind of going to push it into like a more advanced fear of failure. But I think a lot of our listeners have kids that are advanced players or, you know, want to be advanced players. And I'm talking about college athletes, pro athletes. You know, I recently watched a game and where a pitcher struggled, loaded the bases, you know, a one-run game, and he's got to face one of the best hitters in the country. His fear of failure could have got him big time. You know, like, I've just walked off, you know, I walked these guys. This guy got a single. Now I got to face this guy. And he's the best hitter in the country. He's got 13 home runs halfway through the year. He strikes him out. To me, you know, as a coach, I'm going to say that sucker's got some dog in him. But in probably psychology world, Allie can answer this better. He's got something else that and this is where I'm getting to, he's probably prepared for that moment somehow, either in the bullpen or maybe with a sports psychologist or somebody saying, look, you can do this. You can beat that guy. You know, even though you failed getting there, you have this moment, and that's why, kind of answer that question. He loves that moment. He's going to go back. I promise you.
That could have been absolutely terrifying for him. And I think that's
so.
something we can talk about. Like,
he done it.
Right. But he's probably, like you said, been taught the tools how to handle that, the tools to deal with that emotion. There are athletes who live for those type of moments, but there are athletes that are dying inside when they have to do something like that. They've just been taught how to use that emotion the right way.
Right.
They learn how to harness it.
Yeah. But kind of like when, we see little kids like, hey, buddy, you nervous? They're like, yeah. And it's good. Nolan's been that way. I'm like, I got butterflies. For me, that's good. That means you love it. It means something to you. I love that kind of stuff. But sometimes, and Allie can tell us, sometimes that just totally consumes a kid, and I've seen it as a coach, just like, my goodness, what's wrong, buddy? And of course, on a younger age, you're going to get tears, you're going to get, just totally shut down, all kind of stuff. And, that's stuff. I mean, as coaches, we have to be able to do it. And, we don't have I'm lucky I got a sports psychologist on staff at the house, but, not everybody does. So, as parents and coaches, I think it's important to understand what she's talking about.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, Allison, this may be where you're about to go, but that can affect a kid or a young adult in negative ways off the field as well. So say we've made it to the point where we know this kid wants to play. We know this kid's good. We know this kid, doing all the right. He wants to be there, right? But he still can't overcome that knee shaking, trembling kind of issue when he gets in those pressure situations. How do you work with that kid? What do you do with that kid that really wants to be there, that needs to be there, but mentally he's kind of shaky?
I would say, like, as a coach, it's so important that when you see that type of behavior in that moment, you have to address it in that moment, right? It's having a genuine conversation about, hey, I see these behaviors. Can you tell me what's going on? Can you tell me what you're feeling right now? And getting to the root of why they feel that way. But they're not going to have an honest conversation with whoever is the adult in the conversation if they don't. Right? So
say that again, Allison.
Yeah.
Like,
if they don't what?
They're not going to have that conversation with the grown up in the mix if they don't trust them and feel safe to have a conversation. So we can get in like all types of human behavior and performance psychology and all of this. A lot of changing of behavior only occurs in a safe environment. And so when you're talking about the young one who, and here's a practical tip, my ADD kicked in, talking about like butterflies and feeling nervous. Practical tip in our house, when I talk to Nolan, okay, buddy, do you have butterflies or do you have dragons? Right? The butterflies are the good thing, the good nervousness. The dragons are the ones we have to talk about, right? So just to kind of differentiate between, am I just nervous or is this really a problem? But anyways, little one that's nervous, you have to be able to have that conversation in that moment. So if you see them panicking in a pressure situation, they're in the box, they strike out, they come back to the dugout, can you have that conversation with them then? Can somebody have that conversation with them and say, hey, I noticed this, and this. Can you tell me anything about why those are the things I saw? And it can't be accusatory. It could be, hey, I saw when you were in the box, I saw your legs shaking. I saw that you were kind of breathing heavy. Can you talk to me about why I saw those things? And then they can say, well, I'm panicking or I'm nervous or yada, yada, yada. And then you can say, well, can you help me understand? Can you help me understand why you're feeling that way? And so you have to have those conversations. But a lot of times, parents, coaches, hey, take a deep breath. Hey, shake it off. Like, and those are my pet peeve is going to a baseball game and hearing somebody, a parent, somebody, throw a strike. That's what they're trying to do. That's not helpful information, not helpful coaching, right? So when you're talking to this kid in this moment, you number one, have to understand why he's feeling that way, and then give him practical techniques to implement to deal with the emotion. And that's where we get into a lot of coaches not being equipped to do those things.
Well, that's why you see, Allison, you know this from experience, but that's why you see, how many Division I colleges had a sports psychology department 10 years ago?
Ooh, not many.
Very few. How many have them now? Nearly all of them.
Nearly all of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's so important. We used to just rely on coaches to coach hard, and that's all most coaches know how to do. They don't know how to deal with the kid emotionally. They know how to deal with a kid physically. They know how to deal with, to fix a swing or, to fix a kick or whatever, but they don't know how to deal with that kid's butterflies or dragons. And so that's exactly why you see these sports psychologists popping up in all these programs. It's been in professional sports for a while. It's now in college sports, and you're going to see it in high schools and things like that soon too. Just like now, when I was a kid, we didn't have an athletic trainer on staff in high school. Well, now every high school has one, right? It's going to be the same thing with sports psychologists. They're going to have them because that's just, we've realized now, it's taken us long enough. We've realized now that that's such a big, important part of performance. Physical performance is the emotional performance part of it. And so I think that's huge. And that's what you're talking about, is having somebody there who's equipped to do that. But I love what you said about you have to address it in the moment, because if you let the rest of the game go, that kid's going to have either more failures or more successes. And if they have more successes, well, they're going to forget about that one failure, right? And you're never going to figure it out. Or they're going to have more failures, and it's just going to compound, and he's going to be too far gone to even have the conversation. Mm-hmm. So I do love being there to have the conversation in the moment. And I know that's not always easy to do when you got one or two coaches out there on the field with the kids, and you're trying to coach, and you're trying to give signs, and you're trying to call pitches, and you're trying to do all these things. And so, yeah, but I do think it's important for the development of that kid, because we talk about, hey, and I'm rambling, but we talk about, hey, winning's not the most important thing right now, developing the kid. Well, I think one huge component of developing that kid is developing them emotionally, mentally. And so we don't mind telling a kid when they come back to the dugout, hey, this is what I saw in your swing, but we don't often go to, hey, this is what I saw going on with your body. This is what I saw in your eyes. And so I think it's super important for people to hear that you have to address that in the moment. I like that. That was great.
Well, it's like a great parallel. Like if your kid is acting a fool at school and gets in a fight, you're not going to wait till next to talk to him about it. You're either going to the school to have a conversation with him. Mm-hmm. Well, you are, because you're going to be in trouble. See what I'm saying? Like, so. And 9 times out of 10, kids forget too, right? So you get the details. You want all the details to put all the pieces together.
Yeah, if I asked my kid after the game, if I asked my kid after the game, were you nervous in that moment? What were you thinking about? He doesn't know. Like, right. I don't know. I ask him sometimes what Coach Chancy said in the post-game talk, and he's like, I don't know.
I try to be creative, but no. He always knows what you said. I'm messing with you. Well, what I wanted to say on as far as like asking that, like I since she's gotten into this field, it's definitely as a coach, I'm way more interested in that, and because as an instructor, I deal with a lot of kids that are just scared to death. Of a bunch of stuff, and in particular, scared the ball, catching it. and I make them admit it to me, and like tell me, because I believe that's the first step for us to fix this. Like you have to know you're scared of the ball for you to fix yourself being scared of the ball. And tell me if I'm wrong or right, Allie. I think it's the same thing of the failure. They have to know that to fix it, huh?
So
You get it?
that gets tricky. Let's role play. Charlie, what's something you're scared of?
Something I'm scared of?
Yeah.
I'm not really scared of anything. No, actually, I'm scared of drowning
Okay. Why are you scared of drowning?
because I don't swim very well.
Have you ever drowned before?
No,
Do you know anybody that has ever drowned?
not personally. No,
Okay. So how logical is that fear?
not very. I guess. I mean,
Okay.
I don't have any personal experience with it.
Okay. So I am terrified, and this is real thing, of my car going over a bridge while we are over water. So I crack my
Hmm.
window every time I go over a bridge because I have all this in my head. That is a completely illogical fear. 9 times out of 10, fears are illogical, right? If a kid is
Yeah.
scared of the ball, why is the kid scared of the ball? To get hit? That's typically what happened, right?
Sometimes, yes, sometimes.
Why else would a kid be scared of the ball?
Because
Oh no, I've been
I don't
there.
know,
I've
because a
been there.
lot of
Yeah.
times
So
kids are scared of the
you're
ball.
saying,
Sorry, a lot of times kids that are scared of the ball have been hit and it didn't hurt. So, and so I don't know.
And so if they if they are scared of the ball and they've been hit before, then the reason they're scared is because they don't want to feel physical pain. So
Hmm.
not fear of failing at something, it's I don't want to have physical pain. So a lot of
Hmm.
times the fear of failing is rooted in something entirely.
It's a great point. Yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead, Chancy.
yeah, and I have to battle with that. Yeah, I mean, hitters, get brought to me as an instructor. Especially like 9, 10 age, they start getting hit by balls because kids are pitching and they're bailing out, and so I have to like put the create the want to again of you got to want to hit that ball more than you're worried about it hitting you. And I threw to a kid yesterday, little 7U rec ball scrimmage, and this one kid. I mean, as soon as I started to throw, he was running out of the box. I said, "Buddy, I'm not going to hit you." And sometimes I'll do a deal. I'm like, "Look, if I hit you with a ball, you can hit me with a bat." Just something to kind of take their mind off of it, and kind of funny, right? And so, that was just on the spot. I've never seen this kid before in my life. Never thrown to him ever, but he's scared to death. I'm about to hit him. And so, yeah, he's probably gotten hit before by somebody. If
Okay.
not, he wouldn't be bailing out.
Probably his dad.
In that scenario, and I'm not
Maybe.
but in that scenario, what's wrong with if a kid's scared of the ball? Why can't we hit wiffle balls for a little while until we kind of get back into the swing of not being scared to get the box? Why can't we hit tennis balls? So a lot of
I've done
times,
it. I've done it. I've done it. I've done it with players. I'm saying, yeah. I mean, no. That does help. It does.
But here's the thing that I see happening. As coaches and parents, we're so impatient. Like, you're scared of the ball. It didn't hurt. Well, you don't have the authority to tell another person the way they feel about a particular situation. If somebody's scared of the ball, well, let me figure out how to fix it. If it's tennis balls or wiffle balls or whatever the case may be, let me get a bit creative. It may take a little longer, but I'm not dictating the way this person should feel about that experience, right?
Yeah, because
Let
the
me
more I
add-
say,
let me-
the more I say you shouldn't be scared of the ball, the more they're gonna be scared of the ball. Like that's not helping. If I say, why are you scared of the ball? You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be scared.
Let me add to this. So let me add to this. Just let's take that kid back, way back. Me and Allie's had this conversation because we had one, and we see other kids. This happens sometimes when they're little. The physical pain stuff she was talking about earlier. sometimes that physical pain stuff gets escalated by mamas or daddies or somebody that's like, oh my goodness, you scraped your knee. So let's go to the hospital. It's an emergency. It's a big, big, big deal. Me and her have definitely not done that with this one. And sometimes we don't get a tear. We just keep on going. Not saying Nolan's tougher than any other kids, but we don't make it that big of a deal.
No, there's definitely something to that.
Yeah, but still going back to what she just said, it's not a big deal to him because he much rather made the play. Just say if he stumbled, fielding a ground ball, and he's bleeding, it's not going to matter. Now afterwards, he's going to say, "Mama, I'm bleeding," But some kids are just totally shut down, like, "Oh, it's over. My leg broke off. I got strawberry." And I think that's added to by whoever they're around.
Well, you can circle back to the very first point I made. It a lot of times it's how we as the grown-ups respond. Kids are learning in every situation. How I respond to that. Right? You ever think about like the way children get attention? Younger kids get attention. If they throw a tantrum and you give them the attention and you give into what they want, then that behavior becomes a loud behavior. It's become a learned behavior, right? So am I going to let my kid break his leg? No. Am I going to make sure he's safe? Yes. But if he falls down and scrapes his knee, you okay? You need a Band-Aid? No, I'm good. We don't make it a big deal because we don't want him to think it's a big deal. Now, secretly inside, I'm panicking, right? And I've had to work on that as a parent, and then even as a parent of an athlete, right? Nolan was playing 2 or 3 years up last year with a group of kids, and I told Chancy, I was like, he's not playing. He's too young. He's too little. These boys are too big. But I never had that conversation in front of him because I didn't want him to be fearful. So again, it all is about the environment, how we as adults respond to children, how we as coaches respond to our athletes. But it's hard to do, and it takes self-reflection and self-work.
Yeah, you can watch. We can go way down the road of child development and child psychology and that kind of thing. But you can watch a toddler when they fall down. The first thing they do is not cry. The first thing they do is look at mom and dad to see how they respond. And then based on their response, that's where you're going to get that toddler's response. If they're calm, if they're doing nothing, whatever, he's going to get up and run most of the time unless he's really hurt. But if they're panicking and they're running over there and that kind of thing, they're going to immediately start crying. And that's human nature. They're looking for that. It goes back to what we were talking about a while ago. They're looking for how to respond. They want to know. You don't know how you're going to respond until you do it. And somebody tells you the appropriate way to respond. And they feel like the appropriate way is whatever mom and dad did.
So think about take that same like train of thought and apply it to an 11-year-old who just struck out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. If mom and dad or whoever coach makes a big deal about it, then it's a big deal. Yeah. It's exactly what you're talking about at the beginning.
Yep. It's a cycle of learned behavior.
Let me tell you real quick.
It's easy. It's easy as parents. I'm saying it's easy as parents. I mean, it happened to me yesterday. I was super tired. He came and hit it in the cage. Somebody else was throwing to him. I was trying to help some other kids. I mean, no one was swinging. He don't miss. He's swinging, listen. And I just told him, get out of the cage and sit with me. He was mad about it, but I wanted to be. Trust me. I'm like, let's go. I want to say, let's go. What are you doing? In my head, I was doing that, but luckily I've gotten to see this, and I'm like, all right, you're not hitting. It's all right. We're gonna get you hitting. I'm gonna side talk to you. I'm gonna get you going. You're just not warmed up. Whatever. I'm trying to change his mindset because he's upset too. He's a very competitive kid, so he wants to do well for himself. So he can come on and tell mama, hey, I smashed today. That's his reward. He likes being able to do that. So.
Allison, you talked about why can't we hit wiffle balls or tennis balls? I'm going to tell you real quick about how Mike Caldwell, we talk about Mike all the time, about he's ahead of his time, right? So we were probably 5U, 6U all-stars. This was before bull baseball. And our kids were just having trouble. I mean, the only thing we couldn't do was catch pop-ups, right? And so we figured out, hey, they're scared of the ball hitting them in the face. And so we started hitting them tennis balls, right? And so they were catching these tennis balls, man. They weren't worried about those tennis balls. They were catching them all. So then what does Mike do? He goes and buys some yellow baseballs, like the Savannah banana balls. I've still got a few of them in my bucket. So Mike bought yellow baseballs, right? And so we start hitting them yellow baseballs in the outfield. They think they're tennis balls, and they start catching them, and you see them look at it, and that's not a tennis ball. And we're like, exactly. You can catch that ball if you're not scared of it. And so that was a Mike Caldwell special when they were about 6 years old. That's how they learned how to catch pop-ups.
That is a great sport performance psych representation right there. But like, I think the catch is like, we as adults don't want to take the time to do that.
Yeah, that was going to be my point too. I forgot to say that, but it didn't take us 3 practices to do that. It didn't take long at all to get that done. You just got to get them to believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's kind of the whole thing with performance psychology and sports psychology and psychology in general, is that it takes some time. And if you think about human behavior, your thoughts, your feelings, and the behavior are all connected in a triangle. Charlie, you know that. And you have to attend to all 3 to get the desired outcome. And when you neglect one of the 3 or 2 of the 3, you don't have the desired outcome. Maybe you do for the moment, maybe you do for the day, but how is that person, kid, athlete going to respond 6, 7, 8 years down the road, right? And so it's just a cycle of teaching them how to respond appropriate to the emotion. And let me say this: I am not condoning the throwing of the bats, the throwing of the helmets. That's not what I mean by like feeling that emotion, because that's negative behavior that is a totally different story. So I that just popped in my head. I didn't want anybody to think that, oh yeah.
No, I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. But so actually, that's a good point right there. So describe what you mean by feeling the emotion versus doing some type of destructive behavior or unhealthy behavior. What do you mean by feeling the emotion, in context?
How many times have you guys seen a kid go back to the dugout and cry, go back to the dugout and have his fists clenched and his face is blood red and his teeth are clenched, won't respond to anybody? I bet you see that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And Chancy make it on to me. I've heard Chancy say, "You can't be crying in the dugout." And while I understand the context of that, you're actually teaching them that they can't feel the emotion of whatever's occurring, because the crying is just the response to the emotion. And the response to the emotion is what we're trying to change. So in that moment, instead of saying, "Hey, we're not crying in the dugout," go have a conversation, right? So there's a difference between experience and emotion, and like you said, having destructive behavior. One is okay and one is not okay. The crying in the dugout, or the tensing up in the dugout, or whatever it is, the reason why we say there's no crying in the dugout, this, that, and the other, or whatever the case may be, is because it embarrasses the grown-ups, right? It makes it look like we don't have control over what's going on. And we can get into a whole debate about that, but it's okay for them to feel that, right?
Yeah, and so and that's the whole psychology element of it. Is, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but we develop natural coping skills, right? We all develop our own ways of coping through trauma, through whatever. Some are healthy, some are unhealthy, but you can't. And if their coping skill is crying, you can't take away a coping skill without replacing it with something else. You can't just tell them, "Hey, you can't cry," without telling them, "Hey, do this instead." So telling a kid, "Hey, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that," but not replacing it with something else, because they're going to cope in some way. And if you don't teach them a positive coping skill, they're going to continue to cope in a negative way. And so that's a great point too. You have to replace that coping skill, whether it's crying, whether it's throwing stuff, whether it's punching a wall, with something that you want them to do, something that's positive. But it still allows them to relieve that stress.
Yeah.
I just tell them to go to the woods. They need to just go to the woods to deal with it. I've told our group that.
One of
just go deal with it.
Like one of the ways that I've had athletes that cry. One of the things that I encourage criers, which is not a bad thing, I don't say that with negative connotation, just a group of people that's how they respond to that emotion. Take a towel, go dunk it in ice cold water, and I want you to hold it on your face. Because what it does is the nerves on your face, that ice cold, it changes where your brain is focusing. Instead of your brain focusing on the emotion and the emotional response, your brain is now focused on the physical response your body's having in the moment. Mm-hmm. So like I tell mine, I've done it numerous times. Dunk a towel in ice cold water and just have them hold it there on their face while they're taking some deep breaths. And they usually calm down pretty quick. But like we're not teaching coaches and parents those things. So mm-hmm. Our coaches and parents are doing the best they know how to do with what they have.
So, Allison, we've talked a lot about failure and coping with failure and that kind of thing. How does a kid or young adult or whoever, it can even be an adult or anybody really, but how do you build confidence to where, hey, I'm going to go into this, we'll just use the batter's box analogy that we've been using. I'm going to go into this batter's box and I'm going to be confident that I'm going to do something versus shaking in my boots and hoping I do well. How do you build the confidence in a person, an athlete?
So I think specifically in athletes, in my opinion, circle back to like what expectations of performance, right? Do you think you're going to hit a triple every time you step into the box? That's unrealistic. You shouldn't have that goal, right? So I think having those conversations about what it is that you want to accomplish and making sure they are attainable, that's very important for confidence boosting. And again, like we talked earlier, they need to be in situations where they're going to learn how to fail and what that's like to experience, but they've got to be in situations where they succeed, because confidence comes from success, right? But then you can get into what is your definition of success? You know, I worked with a kid back when I was in Hattiesburg, and he was struggling in the box. I was like, okay, maybe it's not about hitting this time. Okay, maybe it's about getting the pitcher's pitch count up. Maybe you take the at bat, 8, 9 pitches. And so it's finding for each individual athlete that they can succeed in, because they're not all the same, right? They don't all have the same strengths. So putting them in positions where they will succeed, setting attainable goals.
So setting smaller goals and really focusing on those. I think that's a great point. And that's what I've been, obviously we've talked about Jackson on here, and he was on here last week, but Jackson's had some confidence issues at the plate this spring. And that's what we've talked about, is just hitting the ball hard. And so this last tournament, he hit several balls hard. He got some really good barrels. Only one of them fell, but it was big to him. Chancy told him at the end, and it was really quick. There wasn't much to it, but Chancy told him, hey, you needed that. You got some good barrels. And that made him feel really good, because it wasn't about getting the hits, right? Because sometimes they fall, sometimes they don't. But he had some good solid contact. And I think that really helped his confidence. And so now I think going forward, he'll have a little more confidence in the box just from something little like that. But it's finding those little bitty goals. It wasn't, hey, get on base every time. It was, hey, let's make some solid contact, because that was something he had not done in a couple of weeks. Yeah. And so let's make some solid contact. And when he did that, you have to praise them for that as well. Yes. And I thought Chancy did a great job with that.
Yeah,
Well, on the development side too, he's going to go in another slump and have some confidence issues, right? I mean, if he's in college, he's going to have issues, and so he's already, the more he gets through that, and whatever helped him, whatever, me saying something, you said something, whatever, he learns to trigger from those things even more, and it might be just himself, So I think that's like for me, that's a development thing. It's like watching like the college kids I was talking about watching earlier. You know, both players have been in that situation before. That's why they can handle it, and especially the pitcher, I think. And so,
yeah,
he'll be able to handle it better later on down the road because he's already been through it.
Yeah, I think finding those little, like you said, Allison, and this is what Chancy had told him, but finding those little goals. Don't try to hit the triple. Just let's start with solid contact. Now, once you start making solid contact, let's start with, hey, let's get a single a game, or let's get on base. It doesn't even have to be a single. Let's just get on base, and those little things, and then you can build up to the bigger things.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can always go back to the little things. When, not if, but when you start to struggle again, you can go back to the little things, and now because it's worked before, now this works.
Right.
Makes it harder to lose confidence in that way because you can always go back to the little things.
That's absolutely correct.
I like that. Allison, what do you tell young kids that come to you? I always ask our former players that come on here, our current players, what do you tell a kid, a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid that is trying to go somewhere, trying to do things? You're at the college level now. You see these guys. What really stands out that they do that you would have these younger kids do?
It's always got. No, it's that's fine. That's a great question. It's always got to be fun. You always have to enjoy it. They're going to be bad days. They're going to be good days. But if you don't love what you're doing and you don't love the sport, then we need to step back and take a look at why, right? I think the other part that I tell my athletes a lot is never stop investing in yourself and never underestimate the power of rest. So as athletes progress, they sometimes think they have it figured out, and they may not need work on their swing. They may not need work on this, that, and the other, but there's always something to learn, right? You get to where I am. Start looking at the nutrition level, your nutrition. Start looking at strength and conditioning. Start all of the psychology. There's all these things that you can continue to learn. So I always continue to invest in yourself. And then, of course, as they progress, they don't rest like they need to. Rest is the ultimate recovery, and your body and your mind have to have it. And so, those are the two biggest things that I see now that I have to really encourage my athletes to do. Make sure you're taking a holistic approach to performance, being, you're in the gym, you're lifting, you're eating and fueling your body appropriately. You're working on your mindset, your performance side game, and you're at practice doing all the technical stuff like you're supposed to. So really invest in that holistic approach, and then of course rest and recover like you should.
Can you talk about, Allison, because this is another one of those things we talked about, sports psych and the mental aspect of the game being a fairly new thing. Well, this whole focus on rest and how rest affects the body and affects performance is fairly new too. Can you talk a little bit about rest and how that does affect your performance in your body?
Yeah. So it's the foundation of everything. And Chancy can tell you, it affects bodily functions. When you don't rest like you should, it messes with your heart, your blood pressure numbers. It can mess with your and then there's so many things on the physical side that it messes with. But then you get into cognitive functioning, right? The way your brain functions. Lack of sleep and recovery and rest is really an ultimate factor in how our brains recover every day. But it's also linked to how you perform. You've got all these new companies out that a lot of our athletes have what's called a whoop band, and it's
Mm-hmm.
for recovery only. And it gauges their hydration, and it gauges their sleep, and it can almost pinpoint how you're going to perform based on the way you rested and recovered. Your muscle, just about your body, your muscles can't produce all those, whatever their proteins or whatever. I'm not a muscle person. I'm not a kinesiology major, but it can't do that without rest and recovery.
The mind
the same way. And that's getting on your phone and scrolling into a rabbit hole on TikTok. That's not rest, And so, in a society where being on the go so much and having this and having that and being here and being there is so rewarded, it's so hard to get my athletes to understand, like, hey, instead of, going to this function tonight for 3 or 4 hours and being out till midnight, why don't you go home and take a shower and go, lay down and go to sleep? So yeah, like that's a really big thing. And like you said, it is new. And so there's not like a ton of research out there. But as a matter of fact, we did here, a couple of weeks ago, we had, like a little pop-up table talking about sleep hygiene and why it's so important. So like, we're talking to our athletes about that too.
Yeah, I think it is very important. And I mean, you can tell, if you're really honest with yourself, you can tell when you're too tired to do things, right? You're not thinking straight. People say I have a brain fog or I'm not thinking straight or I haven't slept or whatever. If you're really honest with yourself, you can tell physically that you're not rested enough. I know Chancy drives back and forth and all this stuff, and he's not resting as much as he should. And so, yeah, I'm sure he gets forgetful, and I'm sure he, things kind of slip by and that kind of stuff. And so you're not at your peak performance if you're not resting and hydrating. Hydrating is huge too. People don't understand what hydration does to the brain. We can talk about the brain forever, but hydration its effects on the brain are just as big as anything else, as rest or anything. Right? You have to be hydrated for your body to function properly. And so those are things that especially kids just don't think about it until it's too late, right? If you're hydrating, like in football, if you start hydrating on Thursday, it's too late, right? You got to be hydrating on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so those things are super important too. And so I'm glad that you brought that stuff up as well.
Oh, yeah.
I've dealt with all of them for sure. Hydration and lack of sleep.
He does. He's supposed to sleep
no
with
doubt.
that little machine on, so he does get rest. But sometimes, very rarely, does he sleep with his little machine on. So that's another.
You'll start a whole. You'll have
I have a hard time with that little machine. That little machine
so do I. You'll start a whole debate in here if my wife hears you saying that, because I don't sleep with mine either, and it makes her furious. And the crazy thing about it, Allison, is when I do sleep with it, I can tell that's better. But I just hate it. I just hate it so bad. But I've oh my gosh, we won't even go down.
I'm with you, Charlie. Here's the deal. I figure out other ways to sleep good. Like sleep in the middle of the day, get a good night, or go to Airbnb on a tournament or something. My sleep schedule is very weird. But it's what it is. But I understand it. I know I need rest. I talk about it all the time. I do go and I'll take a nap. I'll just shut it down and take a nap, and because I have to do lessons, I have to have a practice. And if I show up like, all right, guys, yeah, go take ground balls. All right, we're gonna throw BP. Good job. Get ready for the weekend. I don't like being that at practice. So I do try to get my rest. I don't like being tired. And I understand the importance of it, but I don't like that machine. No, and I don't like to go to bed. So and I have severe ADD. So all that plays a part of me battling. But
when you don't use your machine, you're disrupting my sleep and my rest.
Oh crap! Here we go. That's the argument. That's the argument I get too.
She does an excellent job. she does an excellent job of sleeping. And like just can go to bed. And luckily she trades Nolan to do that, even though he's like me, he don't really want to. She just makes him.
Yeah.
And so it's a struggle. It's always been a struggle for me. Even through high school and whatnot, I have a hard time going to bed. It's not necessarily sleeping, going to bed, then I get tired. And I'm sure college athletes do the same thing. And then they just go and crash, and then they got to start all over. And they sometimes don't need to crash, or they got 6 o'clock workout. It gets hard when you get to college. It really does. I mean, you got to be prepared for that.
It's a big step.
We got to cut this off before Chancy gets in big trouble with Allison.
Oh, I don't get in trouble.
Okay. Allison, man, we really appreciate you coming on and talking, and we'll have you back on here because I want to talk a little bit too at some point about how some of these diagnoses affect athletes as well, ADHD and that kind of stuff as well, OCD, those kinds of things that athletes do have to deal with too, right? So we'll have you back on here at some point too, but really do appreciate you coming on. It's Dr. Allison Rogers at Mississippi State University, Chancy Rogers, the owner-operator Bull Baseball, and I'm Charlie Rogers. Tons of Rogers on here. Chancy, Allison, y'all have any final thoughts before we go?
I appreciate you guys giving me time to speak and a platform to speak on. And you can follow me on my social media and because I put out info there too, just tips and such. And I appreciate y'all.
Awesome.
Well, we appreciate you, and we've been kind of planning a time for her to come on here, and she's been with basketball and it's over, so I figured it was a good time, and that was on my mind, that topic, and so it worked out perfect. I hate we didn't have great service, and I'm sure there's some stuff that was missed, but again, we'll do it again. We might team it up with something else. That way she can kind of bounce off of some other smart people. Not saying that me and Charlie aren't smart, but we'll get some, I think that'd be fun to kind of duel up something there. And I mean, this has been kind of the thing we've been looking forward to. So, because it's a topic that everybody needs to hear and have an open discussion, and we'll do more because we talk about it even when she's not on here already. So it's a thing. It's a thing people need to know. So especially in youth sports.
It definitely is. Your service cleared up as we started going. It cleared up pretty good. I don't think we missed a whole lot. So it was good. Hopefully Allison will pay the internet bill for next week and we won't have these issues anymore. But I'm Charlie Rogers. She's Dr. Allison Rogers. He's Chancy Rogers. This has been the Small Ball Podcast. Until next week, thanks. We'll see you.
Well, maybe it didn't cut out too bad, huh? You was hearing it okay? Like when